In this video, I want to introduce the fundamental frameworks or tools used to support and guide marketing decision-making. A framework, or maybe more correctly called an organizing framework, is simply a guide to help structure your analysis to help ensure it is comprehensive. A framework can help you deal with complexity by guiding you to systematically break down your problem into pieces. Many organizations prefer to call it a tool since you're using it to help you perform some function, in this case conduct an analysis. If I had to convey marketing on one slide, this is the slide. Broadly, marketing is a four-step process. Defining the market, then analyze, strategize, and finally execution. Any marketing plan should include sections on each step. Step 1. In 1960, which is before I was born, Ted Levitt published one of the most popular Harvard Business Review articles ever written, Marketing Myopia. It was not so much an article as a manifesto. Synthesizing contemporary thinking at the time, he argued that companies should stop defining themselves by what they produced and instead reorient themselves toward customer needs. Until then, no one had so practically made the case for centering companies on customers. He provocatively observed, for example, that railroads at the time were struggling because they assumed themselves to be in the railroad business rather than the transportation business. Perhaps his most cited quote is that people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, they want a quarter-inch hole. Thus, marketing decision-making begins by defining your market from the perspective of the customers. What is the job to be done? Step 2 is to evaluate/analyze the most important factors affecting your business. The 5 C's framework helps you to be comprehensive, considering the macro climate or context and 4 key stakeholders: customers, your company, your competitors, and your collaborators. For collaborators, we usually think of your partners in the supply chain. At a minimum, your customer analysis should answer, what is the customer behavior model? And how do customers relate to your product/brand? It can be helpful to write out the descriptors, relationship stage, and economic value of each customer segment. How do you identify your competitors? As mentioned earlier, thinking broader is usually better. So the Atlanta Braves realized that their competition is not limited to other Atlanta-based professional sports teams, but is any activity the customer might spend those dollars on, such as a night out. Here is the concept, only depicted as 4 concentric circles. Again, someone like the Atlanta Braves thinks more broadly than just other Atlanta-based professional sports teams as their competitors. It includes any discretionary food and entertainment option. For products that can be described as a bundle of attributes, some attribute levels tend to be fundamental requirements, implying low transferable demand and fewer substitutes. In this stylized example, consumers begin by choosing the form of an antiperspirant deodorant and are increasingly flexible in the attribute levels as they move from left to right. The third stage is to strategize, typically organized around the STP framework. Segmentation refers to dividing a market up into homogeneous groups such that each group has common needs or decision processes. T stands for targeting or prioritizing segments based upon your capabilities and the relative attractiveness of each segment. P stands for positioning, which refers how you will become the product/service of choice for your target customers vis-a-vis other options. The 4th step is execution. What will you do, typically organized around the 4 P's? Product defined broadly, promotion defined broadly, place or distribution, and pricing. Collectively, this is referred to as the marketing mix. Is there a win for each of the 3 major stakeholders? The company, its customers, and its collaborators. Why do some products fail? A common reason is not providing a win for each stakeholder group. Consider Home Depot's now closed expo stores, which showcased vignettes of washrooms and kitchens that were a big hit with its customers and collaborators, such as faucet manufacturers, but the company, Home Depot, could not get it to the point where the stores were profitable and thus a win for shareholders. Levi's Tailor Classics seemed like a good idea from the company perspective, as expansion into additional apparel categories seemed like a path to growth. However, it appealed neither to consumers nor the retail channel. Apple Watch time travel was embraced by developers, but never really caught on with consumers. Here is a variant of the framework presented earlier. This is used by Professor Shen Lin of the China European International Business School in Shanghai and an alum of Emory's PhD program. The first 3 rows are identical to what we discussed earlier, 5 C's, STP, and 4 P's. An important additional component is what she calls CRM. It describes how the firm is maintaining value through its customer acquisition or attraction efforts and customer retention strategies. Professor Alex Chernev of Northwestern University uses another variant on the framework. One difference is that he distinguishes between an inbound step to analyze and an outbound step to create, communicate, and deliver customer value. The framework also expands the product P into three components: the physical product, service, and brand, expands the price P to explicitly call out price incentives, and renames the promotion P to be communications so there's no confusion with the word promotion referring to price promotion. Here is a template. It has 5 sections. Define the market in terms of customer needs, analyze using the 5 C's framework, STP, what segments are you prioritizing, the value proposition for each of the 3 major stakeholders, execution via the marketing mix. Here is still another variant of the framework. This one is from the predecessor to the McKinsey Quarterly. It cleverly arranges the framework's components into a 3-step value creation and delivery sequence. Choose the value, provide the value, and communicate the value. Here is one final variant. This one casts the framework as a process. Execution through the marketing mix leads to outcomes, behaviors of customers, behaviors of competitors. The outcomes drive marketing performance, which can be measured. In summary, many of the problems faced by product marketing managers and brand managers broadly fall into one of 2 types of questions. With Analyze This type of questions, you are typically reflecting on the early stage of the marketing decision-making process. The 5 C's framework is usually good to employ to ensure you are comprehensive in looking at the problem or issue from the perspective of all the key stakeholders. With What should we do type of questions, you are typically recommending an action. The 4 P's framework is usually best. Again, it is important to be comprehensive. It may be presented to you as a pricing problem, and price may be a viable solution to consider, but you want to be comprehensive, and where appropriate, the problem may also be able to be addressed using other elements of the marketing mix. This concludes this video.